All right, welcome everyone. It's 2 o'clock on the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get this started. If others join, we'll let them in as things go on here. So, welcome everybody. Happy New Year. Welcome to our first cybersecurity presentation of 2022. We hold these monthly, so obviously, the content does change on these. There's also some duplicate content because a lot of the stuff does stay the same. We try to keep up to date on current trends and things like that. So the content does change on this. So hopefully all the attendees will get something out of this, both not only from a business side, but also from a personal side too, because a lot of this applies to personal usage too. So let's get started here. Just let me introduce myself here. My name is Brian Powell. I'm the Network Engineer Manager here at PCA Technology Group. I'm also a certified ethical hacker. And basically all that means is a lot of the stuff that we talk about here, I actually have the capability of physically doing. Do it for good reasons, obviously, to try to help businesses secure themselves from these type of attacks versus the bad guys that try to get financial benefits out of it. So biggest thing, obviously with now, a lot of people are working remotely still. Some have actually moved to that permanently. So why are we really worried about cybersecurity? Well, for starters, last year exceeded 2020 by about 17% in cyber attacks. So you can see there was a massive increase in cybersecurity when it comes to what's going on, and that's not going to change. And a survey was sent out to some of the senior IT leaders as well too, and about 80% of them felt that their organizations either lacked sufficient protection or lacked knowledge about some of these things too. So, as I mentioned, hopefully this presentation will definitely help educate everybody on what some of the stuff is that's going on out there. We hear about it all the time in the news, and hopefully we can try to at least question some things and avoid some of these common, easy tactics that are used against the end users here. And the other thing too is, a lot of companies and businesses are required to follow compliancy. Whether it's HIPAA, whether it's SOC, whether it's DFS. If you're a business in New York State, everybody has to follow the New York Shield Act. They really haven't started to. They haven't started to enforce that yet, but that's been in place for a very long time. Actually, right when COVID hit, they actually passed that law, and they kind of put it on the back burner because they realized that the pandemic was really causing issues. But eventually, they're going to come around and start enforcing that. So every business in New York State will have to comply to that one there. So who's responsible? Pretty much everybody that's listening on this call. A lot of times everyone in a business or a company thinks, oh, well, that's my IT's problem. That's the owner's problem. That's the provider's problem. Well, realistically, everybody is responsible. Each one of those entities does do a part in trying to protect the environment and the company. However, it really comes down to what we call as the human firewall, which is the person sitting at the endpoint and everybody at this presentation right now. So if you use a computer, you are responsible and you are part of that human firewall. I like to think of it as, it's the protections that we put in place is only as good as what the person on the inside is. So if, you have an alarm system at your home and, you feel safe when that's armed, realistically, if I go up and knock on your door during the daytime, a lot of times that alarm may not be armed, or you may disarm it to see who it is, whatever. That's kind of the concept behind it. That alarm is only as good as the person setting it. So the alarm isn't really protecting you. It's you, the individual, remembering to set that. And the same thing comes to cybersecurity too. That human firewall element is a big piece of this. And we're going to address that throughout this presentation. So as we mentioned here, it's kind of gives you, you can see in this cartoon here that everything in that one corner there is pretty much, the security measures that put in place. And then in the other corner, you have the human factor. In this case, the human happens to be a Dave. So we ask that if there are any Daves in the presentation, we're not targeting you, but don't be a Dave. Basically it only takes one person to open a hole, and it pretty much shatters all of the protections and layers that you have in place because of the human factor. So another common stat is, on average, if you are breached by a hacker or exploited by a hacker, a lot of times they're not going to raise up the alarm bells or red flags immediately. They actually tend to stay hidden in your system for up to 7 months. And the reason why they're doing that is a lot of times you're not physically targeted. They kind of basically throw out all kinds of bait throughout the internet and basically wait for somebody to grab that bait, and then they start reeling in, figuring out who took the bait. So they basically are searching around what the company is, what is valuable in the company. Are there credit cards? Are there customer information? Are there trade secrets? Whatever. And basically they'll utilize that to either extort you or sell it or whatever on the internet. So it's definitely something that you need to be aware of. It's not like, oh, you know what, I clicked on something and nothing happens, so we're safe. Well, 7 months later, what you clicked on could have detrimental effects if it's not looked into immediately. So and the other stat is, if in the fact there is an event or a cyber attack of some sort or another, most of those businesses, 60% of them usually end up out of business within 6 months after the attack, simply because financially, reputationally, it's really hard to recover sometimes from these type of events. And the hackers, they're not being nice anymore. These things are up into the, it used to be a few years back that ransomware was a couple hundred or a couple $1,000. Now it's a couple $1 million. So you can see how much it's grown, and companies just can't keep up with it, unfortunately. So hopefully we're going to show you here how to get around it. So how's all this happen? It's basically using social engineering. And basically what that is in simple forms is, I like to think of it as a glorified modern day con man. It's done digitally though. Instead of having someone try to sell you swampland in Florida or prime oil land in Texas, whatever, in the Midwest, and it ends up being nothing more than a sand pit or a swamp. This is kind of what social engineering is, but it's done via internet and digital means. So we're going to show you some of the common tactics here. And it just basically manipulates the human trust factor. It's actually very, very easy to do. And it's unfortunate, but it's really, really the reality of it. And we'll go through some examples here. So some of the common attacks, most of these social engineering attacks, about 95% is email phishing. And basically we'll spend a lot of time going over what that looks like. There's various means of it. There's phishing, spearfishing, and a few other things too. We'll definitely spend some time on that. Social media. You definitely want to be aware of what you post on social media, and I'm talking about all social media platforms, not just your Facebooks or your Twitters. I'm talking about your LinkedIn's, your everything, even business-oriented ones too. Be very, very careful what you post on there. There's so much information that can be harvested from the social media platforms, and it's really used for a lot of reconnaissance. And you can get password lists from there. You can get password reset things from there. We spent towards the end of last year, we did a podcast in more depth on this, and it's actually up on our website under, I think it's under our blog, I believe. It is posted there. We did a couple podcasts. I would suggest, it's about a 15-minute podcast. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about some of that, you can go listen to that at your leisure. It is a recorded thing, and it's real easy to listen to. It's just a recording, but definitely be very, very cautious on social media because there's so much information that can be retrieved there by bad guys. Some of the trends, we mentioned ransomware, and if you're not familiar with what ransomware is, basically it's once they get into your system, they lock your data. They basically encrypt your data to the point where you can't use it anymore. And then they basically tell you, well, if you want that data back, you're going to pay us X amount of dollars. So the idea is that you're hoping that they're ethical criminals, and the fact that, okay, if you do end up paying that ransom, the bad guys will give you the key or the ability to unlock that data so you can then again use it. Fortunately, most of these criminals have been ethical in these events, simply because that's the business model, and it is a business that, obviously if the bad guys take your money and run and don't give you the key, that word's going to get out of that, and people are just going to say, well, I'm not paying it anymore, and the whole business model goes away. So that's one thing. Extortion is another. They're actually double dipping now. So what they're doing is they're not only encrypting your data, they're stealing your data, they're pulling it off your network and threatening to put it on the dark web and selling it to people. So they're getting you not only with the ransomware, they're also getting you to keep them from posting this. And again, you're hoping they're ethical, that they won't post it. However, it's one of those things where you're not really sure. So the idea is to try to avoid this altogether. So, in the event that you don't have to worry about either one of these, but this is the stuff that is going on out there. Who's behind it? A lot of times it's criminal groups, could be malicious insiders, could be third country governments potentially as well. It's definitely a big business model, and it really is. What are the attack vectors? Very often it's more internet based, as I mentioned. There are some occasions where it could be a physical on-site attack. That's not very often, but it could definitely. If you're a government site or a high price target site, those physicals could definitely end up potentially occurring. So it's definitely something you want to be aware of as well too. So when it comes to web surfing, when you're at work, try to keep your web surfing limited to business only. It makes your attack vectors or your potential risk factors a lot smaller. If you're not browsing your favorite news site or political site or whatever it is that you do in your free time, your social media site, you definitely lessen the risk of potentially falling victim to some of the tactics that the bad guys use. And really it's one of those things where you may be on a site and it's not, you're not sure if it's a legitimate site or not. And it sends you to a link somewhere. Let's say you're on Facebook and you end up clicking on a link somewhere and it sends you this third-party site, and there's a pop-up that comes up. What you may not realize is, your natural instinct is to close out the pop-up window, but by doing that, you could actually be downloading something in the background without you even realizing it. So it's something that, you definitely want to be cautious. If you do end up in a situation like that, you could hit Control W on your keyboard or Alt F on your key or Alt F4 on your keyboard, and that will actually either close down the window with focus or it'll close down your entire browser. But a lot of times some of the browsers do have pop-up blockers in them too, that might stop some of that. But it's also easier if you just limit your web surfing. That way you don't have to worry about those potential malicious pop-ups or downloads or anything like that. So we'll touch a little more on the web stuff as we get into the email, because it does kind of tie into that a little bit. So from the email side, again, you can see a common theme here. Don't utilize your work email for personal usage. We're past the holidays now. But I know a lot of people, prior to, right around Black Fridays and stuff like that, they tend to do their Christmas shopping, and some people even do it way before that. But they tend to do their Christmas shopping, and they use their business email, as the contact for their Amazon, their eBay, their shopping gifts, and all this stuff. Don't do that. Do not do that, because you're setting yourself up for potential failure. You need to keep your shopping and your personal stuff on your personal email, and your business only on your business stuff. You gotta isolate the two, because if you don't, a lot of times what the bad guys do, especially around prime shopping times, is they send you fake shipping notices, they send you fake invoices, they fake payment notifications, inventory notifications, in hopes that you're going to open those up. They're going to send you an email saying, hey, it's back in stock, your product's back in stock or whatever. And they may have found out that you were looking for something because you posted it on Facebook asking your friends, hey, I can't find the latest Xbox. So, where can I find this at? Well, guess what? The bad guys troll those sites. They scrape those sites, get that information out. They figure out who you are via LinkedIn or your Facebook, from a business side. And they start sending you emails and saying, hey, it's back in stock. And they send you to sites that, again, could have malicious information on it. So if you are not using your business email for those type of activities, if you get one of those in your business email, you can simply ignore it and delete it instantly. You don't even have to think about it. And that's the idea. You don't want to be getting into those types of emails where you have to constantly, is this real? Is it not real? I don't know. The more you limit your personal usage on your work email, the easier that process is. I'm not saying it's completely foolproof, but it definitely narrows down the stuff that's very, very obvious. I got a PayPal notice. Oh, I don't use my work email for PayPal. See ya. Delete it. Don't even have to waste your time on it. So it's much easier if you do that. Now, obviously, if you're a company that does use Amazon services or some of those services, maybe you do sell some stuff on eBay. Obviously, it's going to be a little more difficult for you, but you need to try to limit what you can if that isn't the case. It definitely makes things so much simpler. So on the same token, if you are separating your emails, don't be checking your personal email off of your work computer or while you're connected to the work network if you're doing it off your phone. If you do that, it's almost the same thing as if you were sharing your emails, because now you're opening up your personal emails that might have those false informations, but you're doing it off your work computer. So when you open it, anything malicious in there is going to run on your work computer. Make sure you're checking that stuff either at home or checking it on your phone using your data plan and not connected to the company wireless. Most of our clients are isolated, where we have a visitors or a wireless network that's not connected to the actual company side of things. So you won't be able to get infected via that way. But the easiest way to avoid it, again, is just use your data plan. Almost everybody nowadays probably has an unlimited plan. So use your wireless plan to check your personal email, and then there's no issues or questions with that. So the other thing that we recommend too, and I know a lot of people aren't big fans of this slide. However, this is the a screenshot of the preview pane in Microsoft Outlook, which most entities use at this point in time, and we highly recommend disabling that preview pane. Now, Outlook has come a long way, as have Microsoft, in trying to catch a lot of the bad stuff, but it doesn't catch everything. So if you disable that preview pane, and basically it's the screen that we're looking at here, where that top message gets highlighted, and it basically shows you the contents of it over in the corner. In this side right here, you can see right here, this is the contents of the message because it's highlighted here at the top. That's not good, because what happens is let's say, for instance, you go to lunch. Basically, any message that comes in, when it hits the top message, it's going to preview it. It's going to open it basically for you automatically without you physically opening it. So if you actually go to lunch and you get a malicious email slip through the cracks somehow or another, and this preview pane decides to open it up, there could be something running for potentially over an hour, depending on how long your lunch is. By the time you get back, you realize, well, what the heck is going on here? And that thing could be running for over an hour because this basically opened up an email. So what we recommend is turning that off, and to do that, you just go up to the view pane up here. Or the view tab up here, and then come over to the reading pane. If you hit that drop down there, I think it says right, bottom, and then off. Just turn that off, and then this whole screen right here on the side will actually disappear, and it'll just be the messages on the inside, and it will not open those up for you anymore. So you'll have to double click the message to open it, but you are physically doing that action versus the software doing it for you. It's much safer that way. This is an example of a phishing email. This one is basically looks like it's coming from Microsoft Outlook, and basically it's saying that your password is expired. So what happens if you get one of these emails, and what exactly does this email do? This email is crafted in such a way that it looks like it's coming from Microsoft, when in fact it's actually designed to do that and trick you into thinking it. It's not really coming from Microsoft, but it looks like it's coming from Microsoft. So what's the idea behind it is basically they send you the password's expired, so they're trying to manipulate you into some type of an action. And that action is, under normal circumstances, when you get one of these, there's going to be hyperlinks buried in. And you can see here, one's change your password, and another one is click below to change your password. So the idea is that they're trying to get you to click either that one, or the change your password, or the one at the bottom. So what is that going to do? Basically, it's going to send you to a website that is also malicious. It looks like Microsoft, but it isn't. And what they're trying to get you to do is to type your username in there, which is your email. And when you do that, it's going to ask you for your password. So they're going to try to get you to type your password in there. So if you do that, you're probably going to get some kind of login message saying error or wrong password or whatever. The screen's going to refresh itself, and it's going to ask you for that information again. And you're going to put it in maybe the second time. You might get another error, or it might just work. And you're going to think that you potentially just mistyped your password the first time around, which is why it didn't work. Well, the problem is the first site that you went to was a malicious one, because these links are pointing to that malicious site. And when you put your information in there, it actually recorded that information, not only your username, but also the password that you typed in there. And it actually sent it to the bad guy who set up that website. It then redirected you to the right Microsoft site. So the second time you were actually on the correct site, and that's why your login information works. So you basically effectively gave your login information from the first site by typing it in for the bad guys. That's what this type of email does. What we recommend, if you ever get one of these emails that says your password is expiring, or you need to verify something or whatever, figure out who this who the email is supposedly coming. So in this case, obviously they're trying to be Microsoft. It's coming from Microsoft. So what I recommend doing is don't click on these links at all. Go to a web browser yourself, whether it's Chrome, Firefox, Edge, whatever your browser of choice is, Safari if you're a Mac user, and go to that web browser and type in the Microsoft site yourself and log in with that method. Don't click the links, open up a browser and go to the site yourself. That way, you know you're getting to the correct site because you're physically typing it. You're not blindly following these links that make it appear like you're going to the right site. It's the easiest way to avoid these type of attacks, and it makes it very, very more foolproof than it would by following these blindly. Another example of an email is this one, and it basically starts out. This actually uses like a fear tactic. It's sending it out to a person that, and it basically starts out saying, hey, it looks like XYZ is your password. And the reason why people fall for this or kind of get into the mindset that this might be real is because that password that they're saying there is a password that the person receiving this email recognizes. And it immediately puts them into that fight or flight mode with the mind. And most people don't think rationally a lot when you're in that type of mode. So you immediately get put into the holy crap, what the heck's going on here? I don't know what's happening. And they put you in that frantic mode, and then you start reading the rest of this message, and it basically says that they have video proof of you on adult-oriented sites, and they're gonna send recordings of it to your wife, your husband, your family, your friends, or whatever. Basically trying to extort money out of you for whatever this is, what I think is $2,900. And people don't think rationally about it, and because they hit that initial fear thing with the password. So the only thing that's really valid in this is probably the fact that they did get a password of yours somehow or another, whether hopefully it's an old password and not a current one, but the rest of this is really bogus. It's just intent to, because they use that tactic in the beginning there, the rest of this, you kind of hope, they're hoping that you process it and think it's true when it really isn't. The biggest thing is, how did they get that password in the first place? As we mentioned, you know, many sites unfortunately get attacked and breached, and so what probably happened is a third-party site that you're on obviously probably was breached, and the first thing the bad guys do is usually go after the password databases and the username databases. They pull them offline and use a method called brute forcing to try to guess what your password is, and we'll get into that later here, how easy and how fast that can be done. But they basically figured out what your password is because they guessed it, or they figured it out. So again, you know, you can pretty much ignore these type of emails unless that password that they have is something that you're currently using. At that point, you definitely need to make some wholesale changes very quickly, because anywhere that you're using your email at with that password is potential to get breached if this bad actor figures out the combination of the two. Again, if you're not using your business email for personal usage, you may not even get one of these, because again, it's one of those things where third-party sites, you know, I'm not saying businesses can't get hacked too, but you know, your gyms, your book clubs, your all that stuff, if you're using your business email for that, there's all potential for that account to get breached using that email address as the login. So again, if you're using your personal thing, you shouldn't see these type of emails come to your business. And if you do, again, it's either you must have used your email somewhere, or you're sharing passwords across your personal and your business. So okay, the next one here is called spearfishing. So the first one, the first two really are kind of throwing out there. The first one is really kind of a scatter shot. You throw a net into the lake and you pull it up and figure out what you got. The second one that we went over was a little more targeted because it was they were using compromised credentials. And you know, some of you may have heard that the New York Attorney General, you know, just announced recently there was a whole bunch of user accounts that were compromised. They did supposedly reach out to 17 different companies on these. They didn't really say what the companies were or who they were, at least in the articles that I saw about it. But basically, this is, you know, they're doing credential stuffing, and what it is exactly what we said. You know, they got their password information and their login information, and they just try other places that they think they might be utilizing those at. And you know, that's what's going on. So in this case, this is spearfishing. So this is a little more targeted. So this tends to be more specific. In this case, it's somebody pretending to be an employee, and they're sending a message to either their payroll or their HR person, asking them to, hey, I would like to change my direct deposit information, and I want it done, you know, for the current pay date. If you're a company that doesn't have correct procedures and policies in place, and you will simply take this for what it is, what's going to happen is you are going to think this is actually the employee. You're going to change their direct deposit information, and payday is going to come, and this employee is going to figure out that, hey, wait a minute, I didn't get a paycheck. What's going on? And they're going to come to you, and you're going to say, oh, well, you requested this, and they're going to be like, no, I didn't. So you're basically going to send their paycheck to a drop account that was probably set up with stolen identity, that as soon as it hits it, it gets emptied out and closed. And you're pretty much, you know, out the pay because you've got to pay the real person, because the policy is that you should have either paperwork that needs to be signed physically, or this request has to be physically asked in person, or verified with the actual person in some way, shape, or form. Never take these type of requests without doing some physical follow-up or physical checks to make sure that this is actually the person that they say they are. We're going to show you later on here that there's a way to potentially combat this too, and it will help at least bring to attention whether this is actually somebody from the inside or not. We'll show you that here in a few slides here. So the next one is whaling. So whaling, you're going after the big fish, or you're pretending to be the big fish, and that's usually sea levels. So these type of attacks either go after and target sea levels, or pretend that they're sea levels and target people that are underneath the sea level. So again, they're using that fear factor where, oh, well, I can't say no to my CEO, or I can't say no to my CFO, or I'm not going to question this, I'm not going to question that. My advice is question everything. Your CEO and C-level folks are going to be much more happy with you questioning whether things are valid or not, and saving them thousands and thousands of dollars versus blindly following an email request to go out and buy me some gift cards because I'm giving them out at a meeting that I'm going to this afternoon. And that's usually what it is. So in this case here, this is an example of someone pretending to be the CFO. And, you know, I'm assuming this Sean person is somebody internally that works probably in the finance or underneath the CFO, basically saying, hey, are you busy? I'm out of the office and I need you to process me a wire transfer. Again, anything with financial requests, whether it's gift cards, whether it's this type of thing, wire transfers, anything like that, you need to verify physically with the person that it is actually them, that either call them up on their cell phone or go to their office or something, confirm that you're actually talking to the right person. Because again, these tactics are heavily used, and you know, a lot of people fall victim to them, unfortunately. And by the time they realize it, it's usually too late. So again, we're going to show you here very shortly how to potentially avoid some of this stuff. And it's actually, I think it's in the next slide here. Let me just check. Yes, it is. So basically, this slide here is an example of how you could potentially avoid some of those previous methods that we mentioned with the spearfishing and the whaling. And basically what this is, it's a feature that we recommend activating, especially if you're an Office 365 user or an Office Outlook user that hosts their mail through Microsoft. This is basically an external banner. So what it is this will basically, you can see this message here that basically says this message has originated from outside of your organization. Don't click any attachments or open any things unless you recognize the sender and know the content is safe. So why is this such a great thing? Well, because if you have somebody that is pretending to be an inside person or pretending to be your C-level person, and the message that you're getting has this notification on it, this highlighted notification on it, it is not coming from the person's inside email. I can tell you that. This is a very quick visual way of telling whether the email is coming internally from the real internal person or from somebody outside pretending to be that person. If it has this header or this message on it, it is not the real person, because if it was the real person, it would be coming internally through your internal system, and it would not contain this email message. So this is really helpful, especially on cell phones, you know, because on the cell phone, if you're quickly going through your email, it's not as easy to really see all the information that you can see if you're looking at it on your desktop. But this header will stand out like a sore thumb, and that's the whole point. You know, hey, wait a minute, my CEO is asking me to go do a wire transfer, but I noticed this big yellow banner at the top saying that it's out from the outside. What, you know, you should immediately know that that is not the real person asking that, because it would not be coming from the outside. It would be being routed internally within your own organization instead of coming from the outside. So highly recommend you know, enabling this. It's not a paid feature. If you're a Microsoft Office 365 user and your email is hosted through Microsoft, it's a very simple configuration change, and I highly recommend that to avoid some of those traps and tricks that the bad guys use. So this is just another example of what's called farming, and that was, you know, trying to get people to go to fake web pages to harvest their login information. Again, this is an email. It looks like it's coming from Trusted Bank. The idea is that they want you to read this, and it sounds like it's trying to manipulate you into thinking there was a withdrawal attempt from another country, and you need to click here to this link here to go and verify whether this is real or not. And again, if you are a trusted bank customer in this example, I don't want you to click that link. I want you to open up a web browser. I want you to go to trustedbank.com by you typing it into the web browser yourself. Once you're there, log in with your credential because you know you're at the right site. You physically typed it. And if this message is real, somewhere in your message system there, your notification system there, it's going to ask you if this information is correct. And the same thing with the password resets. You know, if you are an Exchange user through Microsoft, the minute you log into Exchange, if your password has expired, it's going to prompt you that it expired. But again, clicking on that link, you could eventually potentially give up your login information. Now, what happens if you do click one of those links? The first thing I want you to do is to notify somebody if you think you accidentally clicked on something that you shouldn't have. We're not here to shame you. We're not here to reprimand you. It's the faster we know as a company, you know, obviously if you're one of our clients, reach out to our help desk, just let them know, hey, I think I might have clicked on something. They can quickly go in and see if there's anything going on. They may involve me as well at that point, just to give it another set of eyes to make sure there's nothing malicious going on. But don't blindly let it run and think, oh, well, no one will ever know, because if something is going on, it's so much easier to stop immediately after it's happened than, you know, 6 months, 7 months down the road when the guys decide to encrypt your data and you find out that, oh my gosh, I'm the one that let them in. So, you know, it's much easier. Like I said, we're not here to shame you. We're not here to reprimand you or anything. We just want to make sure that you're protected. So there's another one going on right now that is another tactic that they're using. It's called consent phishing. And what it is, it's an application that basically is asking for permission. So, you know, you might get one of these pop up at some time or another. This is an example of a malicious one, and what it's asking for, it's saying, hey, I want to be able to access your your emails. I want to be able to read your contacts. I want to read your calendar. I want to read your OneDrive. I want to read everything. Basically, what this is asking for is keys to the kingdom. And so what happens if you happen to click accept here in this particular case? If you click accept here on this one, and again, this is a malicious one, what you're basically doing is giving this app full-blown access to your entire Microsoft account without them needing your login or your password. You're giving this application full-blown access to everything you have in the Microsoft realm, everything. So they can access everything. They can send email as you. They can do whatever they want, all without having your login information, because you basically clicked accept here. Even if you're running Multifactor, and we'll talk about that, this bypasses that too. So you're basically giving them full-blown access to it. What I recommend is if you ever get one of these windows pop up and you're a customer of ours, please call our help desk before clicking on anything. Let us take a look at it, or hit cancel immediately, whatever, because it's very unusual that these type of apps will pop up. Now, occasionally there might be some legitimate cases if you're trying to do some integrations or something with some third parties, maybe Act. If you use Act as a contact manager, sometimes contact managers might tie in and have an actual legitimate app that might ask for some of that information. But what I highly recommend is just reach out to our desk. We can do a quick visual before you get yourself into a potential problem, and we can easily, you know, suggest things. In this case, it is malicious. You can tell that because it says that right here. It's risky app and it's been unverified. Most legitimate apps will come through as verified, and right now, as of the date today, the bad guys have not figured out how to get past that verification process from Microsoft. So, you know, it will happen. It's just a matter of time. It's just they haven't figured it out yet. But you know, right now, this is basically giving you that hint. But again, if you get one of these pop up and you're a client of ours, just reach out to our help desk. It won't take long for us to just do a quick visual on it, and it's better safe than sorry. So, and finally, with everything going on with COVID, the last technique here is called quishing. And basically what it is, is a lot of touchless stuff now. Everybody doesn't want to touch menus. They don't. In fact, restaurants don't even hand out menus a lot of times. They put these little things on the tables that scan this with your phone to read our online menu and things like that, because you're doing it off your physical phone. You don't have to worry about touching menus that have been touched by 12,000 other people prior. That's normally great. However, the problem is that this is an easy way to conceal malicious URLs, basically malicious websites, because that's really what these are. These are just codes that send you to either send you to a file or send you to a website, and that's the whole concept behind this. So you would be shocked how many people just blindly scan these things out of the blue. I actually did a social engineering test just because I was curious. I actually went into the mall and I put a QR code on a board, like an advertising board within the mall. It was a sticker. It was completely harmless, but I was just curious how many people I would get to actually scan that code, and it was ungodly amounts. Now this was over Christmas time. And it was just a code. I put nothing, no other letters, no, hey, save $10. I didn't do any of that stuff. That would definitely get people to do it. I just put the code on the board, and I probably got 100 plus people that actually scanned that code just off the board for absolutely no reason whatsoever. So if I was a malicious person, I could have potentially hacked over 100 people easily. And all I did was put a sticker on a public board. With no lettering, no nothing. It was just the QR code. So you can imagine if I walk into a restaurant and drop one of these on a table, no one would ever know. Even the staff there might not even know that it's not even a real one for them. So you got to be very, very careful of what you're scanning with your phones, because it's not very easily to figure out the URLs on these things before it actually takes you to them. So I would recommend, be careful when it comes to this, because this is a very, very easy way to have this done without you even realizing it. So that brings us on to our next device here is basically USB and mobile devices. The USB is like your USB keys. Your flash drives is what I'm talking about. If you ever come across one of those laying around and you don't know where it came from or who the owner is, don't plug that thing into your machine. It could have something malicious on it that could run automatically the minute you plug that in. So try to avoid those. I would suggest, if you're a client of ours, give it to the engineer that when they're on site, we can do a scan of it and make sure it's safe and then return it. Either try to figure out who the person is, or if there is something malicious on it, we can clean it and then give it back to you. But always be cautious of USBs. The other thing too is if you do happen to use USBs to transfer files back and forth between work and home, be very, very careful. A lot of times the machines at work are managed and protected properly. That may not be the case for the home machine. So if you do happen to plug that in at home, a virus or a malicious file could put itself on that device, and you actually bring it back in with that USB device when you go to plug it into your desktop at work or your laptop at work. So you definitely want to be careful and do virus checks at both sides before you try to transfer files. The other thing too is your mobile phones. Obviously almost everybody nowadays has some sort of smartphone. We all know that they're also battery hogs, so some more than others. If you try to charge that, you'll notice that a lot of those chargers are USB based. If you go to charge that and you actually plug that into your desktop or your laptop to charge instead of the wall charger that comes with them, what you may not realize is, yes, it will charge your phone, but it also turns your phone into a USB device. So if there's something on that phone, just like a USB flash drive, if there's something on that phone waiting to be plugged into a Windows network, you could actually, infect your network with your phone potentially. Again, I recommend that you use the wall brick, the power brick that plugs actually into the electricity, not your PC or your laptop or anything. That way, you avoid any potential risks with that. Also, be cautious of public charging stations. Again, as I mentioned, a lot of times these phones are power hogs. And if you're doing a lot of traveling or a lot of whatever, you may be at the airport and, oh man, my wall charger is in my checked-in bag. I forgot to put it on my carry-on, and my battery's dying. Oh, look, there's a public charging station right over here. There's a lot of good ones out there, but there's also malicious ones too, and it's very hard to tell the difference. Again, it's one of those things where if you happen to plug your phone into a malicious charging station, as I mentioned, it will charge your phone, but now that malicious charging station is actually pulling information off your phone because, again, I mentioned it turns it into that USB device. It's actually sucking your contents in. It could be your contacts and all that stuff that might be used maliciously. So you got to be very, very careful of who you're trusting when it comes to charging your phone. I recommend, again, your wall brick. You can get that on the plane. As long as it's within a reasonable size. The TSA doesn't bark about that. But you can carry that on the plane with you, and you can use that as if you need to. So just be aware of that. So now we're on to passwords. As we mentioned, there's a lot of things when it comes to passwords. And one of the things, some of the things, here's our recommendations basically. So we recommend that your passwords should be complex, secure, and unique. And that basically means that they should be 9 characters at a minimum. The more the better, and we'll show you here shortly why that is. You should have at least one special character, and that's a character like an exclamation mark, a pound sign, a dollar sign, percent sign, something of that nature. That's considered a special character. You should have at least one uppercase as well, and at least a number. So you should have 9 characters and at least one of all 3 of those suggestions. And they should be unique. So, a lot of people at this point are like, there's no way in God's green earth I'm ever going to remember a unique password for every place I use. How am I supposed to do this? Well, the good news is that from a business standpoint, your password usage should be fairly small. In most cases, I would say a normal user at a business would probably have maybe 3 to 5 passwords that they have to use for their daily functions. Now, on a personal level, it might be a lot more, and I get that. So what I recommend, whether it's for personal or whether it's for business, I recommend personally, I actually write my passwords down, but I do it in such a way that I don't record the entire password or the real password. So it could be a simple Excel file. In my case, I use a simple text file. Now, I do store that text file on an encrypted USB key. So the only way to get into that key is to unlock it with a password, which I have memorized, a very large password, which I have memorized. So I have to remember one password. Once I unlock that USB key, it's a simple text file within there, and I have all my passwords and websites and stuff that I need that information for recorded in that text file in such a way that even if someone did get into that, or I accidentally left it open into my machine, I would have no problems with someone walking up behind me and actually trying every one of those passwords, because none of those passwords are going to work by them copying them directly the way they're written. So what do I mean by that? Let's say you're physically writing them down on a piece of paper, and you can do this, but it's completely up to you. I know a lot of companies frown upon that, but what you can do is you can record that password in such a way that, let's say you're using a 9-character password. In the event that you're going to record that password, you could potentially maybe only record 7 characters of that password. So there's 2 characters missing. You know what those 2 characters are personally. So you remember maybe it's an A and a B. That's just for simplistic sake. And you know that the A goes at the beginning of that password and the B goes at the end of that password. So those 2 pieces are missing. You also know where they belong. It could be at the beginning, it could be all at the beginning, it could be all at the end, it could be whatever. You know that combination and what is missing. So if somebody comes up and actually sees your password list, they're going to try the 7 digits that are on that piece of paper, and it's not going to work because your real password is 9 digits, not 7, and you know the missing pieces. So you're physically writing your pieces, your passwords down on that paper. You're memorizing what those missing pieces are. You know, obviously, if you keep it to 2, it's a lot easier to remember that. You know, you could go further with it too if you wanted to. On the flip side, you could do the exact opposite. So instead of recording 9 characters, if that's the real size of your password, maybe you're recording 11 characters instead. So you're adding characters to your password that you know when you go to log in, you have to remove or skip those characters. It could be 2 at the beginning, it could be 2 at the end, it could be 1 at the beginning, 1 at the end, whatever your pattern is, or combination. It could be 3, it could be 4, it could whatever you want to come up with. You know what the added characters are. You also know what the pattern is. So again, if somebody comes up to that piece of paper, they're not going to be able to easily just read off and steal your passwords. Now, if you are adding characters, I will caution you. Unlike when you're peeling characters, they cannot be the same when you're adding them. So what I mean by that is, let's use A, B again. And let's say you're putting an A at the beginning and a B at the end of every single one of your passwords that you have written down there. Well, me as a bad actor, I can take your password list and I can put it through a piece of software that will actually analyze what is written on that paper. And it will actually pick up after about the 3rd time of seeing A and B at the beginning and the end of your password that is on that piece of paper, that is your pattern, and I will know what your pattern is because you use the same characters for your pattern. When you're adding characters, you have to use random characters at will because you don't have to remember it. You just have to remember that, hey, I got to peel the first character off and I got to peel the last character off if that's your pattern. That's all you got to remember when you're adding stuff. But they have to be randomized because otherwise that automated software is going to recognize what your added characters are, and I'll try it without that then. So it's something that you need to be aware of. So, you know, if you are adding characters, you might be A and B for the first one. It might be a 1 and 3 for the second one. It could be whatever random characters it is. Just make sure they're randomized when you're adding the characters. So there's no pattern to that additions. Most people actually do the missing characters because it's easier, or you could do a combination of both. You could have missing characters on one side of the password and added characters on the other, and you know you have to add these characters and peel those characters off. I mean, you could see the combinations are endless, and you can easily store your passwords that way, where you'll have them at least written down and be able to use them frequently. A lot of people also ask about password managers. That's another way of potentially doing it. I personally am not a big fan of those. In fact, I don't use those at all. And because one, they're huge targets for the bad guys. The bad guys know everyone's passwords are in those things. There's 5 real big ones out there. And out of the 5, 3 have been breached already, and 1 has been breached 3 times. So if you want to trust your passwords with somebody else's hands, you could potentially do that. I'm not saying you can't, but me personally, I will put them on a piece of paper or on my text file. In fact, I'll give you that text file. Good luck figuring out what my passwords are, because I will bet $1 million you'll never, ever guess what the passwords are, because I use combinations all over the board. I know what the pattern is, so unless I'm telling you what it is, you will never figure it out ever. And I'm very confident of that. So, that's just how I think of it. So why do we say 9 characters? You can see here that, when it comes to potentially guessing passwords, if you're using numbers only, all the way up to 10 characters, we can pretty much guess number passwords instantaneously up to 10 characters. So if that's all you're using is numbers, 10-digit numbers can be guessed instantaneously and figured out very, very quickly. As you see, as you go across the board here, you can see it gets longer and longer and longer. Ideally, the higher up in characters you go, and you start mixing cases and symbols and stuff like that we recommend, you can see how long it starts to take. The 9 that we recommend with a very high-powered cracking machine, password machine, that's built specifically for trying to, figure out the passwords. It'll take roughly about 3 weeks. If you take that to 10 characters instead, now it's going to take about 5 years to guess that password. If you happen to use 11, we're all long dead and gone before that password's ever breached. So you can see, how the entropy here really changes as you add characters to this and use the combinations that we recommend. So the other thing too, and we mentioned this, is something called multifactor. So multifactor is an additional way of potentially stopping breaches when it comes to passwords. This will actually stop 99.9% of hacker attempts in the event that your credentials are potentially compromised. So what does this do? It's another concept of something you have and something you know. It's called two-factor or multi-factor. So the something that you have or something that you know is your username and your password. So much like everything else, when you go to log in, it's going to ask you for your username and your password. That's the something that you know. And once you put those two pieces in there, now it's going to prompt up another box and say, okay, give me the 6-digit code that is on your phone or out off of the app. Sometimes it might push it to you too. Hey, are you trying to log in and you have to hit yes? Yes, it's me, or no, it isn't. So basically the something you have piece is your phone. Sometimes it's hardware tokens too, but that's the concept behind it. So if a bad guy does happen to breach your credentials or compromise your credentials without your phone or without the token, without that code, it makes it extremely difficult for that person to get into your account without that multi-factor. Now, again, if the previous slide, I just told you we can guess 10-digit numbers almost instantaneously. More times than not, these codes are 6-digit codes. But the problem is that I almost have to be sitting next to you and know that you're waiting for that code for me to try to guess it in the short period of time that I have before it resets. So that's why it's not 100% foolproof. Nothing is 100% foolproof, by the way. But this definitely stops many attempts when it comes to compromised credentials. So it's just something to be aware of. If you're not using this, highly recommend that you do use it. It definitely adds an additional layer into things for you. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the public Wi-Fi, but the one thing I will say in general, again, we also have a podcast that gets really deep into this and why you shouldn't be using public Wi-Fi for anything more than maybe directions. I would recommend staying off of public Wi-Fi and using your data plan on your cell phone at all costs. There's so many risks involved in public Wi-Fi. And unfortunately, I just saw an article towards the end of the year that Yahoo posted. It was on a Yahoo News or something saying that, oh, well, the risk of public Wi-Fi isn't there anymore. And I'm not sure who the article writer or the author was of that, but I would love to run into them at a coffee shop sometime and prove to them how wrong they are in that article. It's sad. And, my thing is, if you're doing anything on public Wi-Fi, that you would not walk up to a complete stranger anywhere on the street or in that building and tell them exactly what you're doing, word for word, instant for instant. You do not want to use public Wi-Fi. It's that simple. And again, you can listen to that podcast on your own time. I'm not going to take up much time here because we're running out of time, unfortunately. So some reminders here from a cybersecurity side. Only collect the data you need. Obviously, that's from a business side. If you're regulated in a tax company and you only need to keep 7 years worth of data active, don't keep 10 years online. You can keep it, but make sure that additional 3 years is offline. Because if you get breached with 10 years worth of data, you are responsible for all the data that is online. And it could be more than that too. So just be aware of that you should be archiving stuff outside of that compliance window and regulation window that you're in. Obviously, limit access to systems with sensitive data, logins, passwords, the likes of that. Make sure your personal devices are secured, and make sure you're using proper firewalls and your networks are isolated. Anytime an employee leaves or gets terminated, make sure you're notifying the right people so we can disable those accounts. The pipeline hack that happened a while back, that was actually from an old employee account that wasn't disabled, and eventually the credentials got compromised through another site because they did use their business email somewhere and it got compromised, and it found out that it matched the VPN credentials that they use at the company. And that's what happened. So it was nothing but a huge egg on everyone's face because they were reusing passwords. They didn't disable the account. It was a known compromised credential. So it was just a major security flaw across the board. So you could have avoided all that by simply following just some of these reminders here. Regularly back up your data. Obviously a backup in the event you do have a security event. This is the best way back and recover from it. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully this is enlightening to you. Again, you can listen to those podcasts for more in-depth details. We look at social media. We look at the wireless stuff. We just came out with some tips that we recorded just recently here. I'm not sure that's posted yet, but it will be coming soon to kick off this year's recordings. So highly recommend you do that. And again, we do have these presentations on a monthly basis. A lot of the content is the same, but I do update this frequently just because a lot of stuff changes in the security side of things. So hopefully this was a good thing for you guys. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat. Or you can send information out here to info at pcatg.com, and we can obviously get back to you as well too. So I don't see anybody in chat here right now.
Hi, my name is Danny Banks, and I'm the Technical Director of Business Development here at WatchGuard Technologies. So the question is, did you know that an estimated 57% of small to medium businesses do not have cyber insurance? Well, I think that's about to change soon. With the recent SolarWinds, Colonial Pipeline, and Kaseya cyber attacks, we've seen an increased interest in cyber liability policies. But insurance companies want to make sure that you have strong risk mitigation in place before they write you a policy. And if you want to qualify for cyber insurance, you need to implement multi-factor authentication across your company, especially protecting email access, remote access, VPNs, and admin logins to servers and firewalls. So if you want to learn more about the MFA requirements when purchasing cyber insurance, come visit our website at www.watchguard.com/insurance.